So before we jump right into our topic today, which is sustaining meditation practice, I think if we all have experience with New Year's resolutions or something of the nature of a resolution that we're going to do and we're very enthusiastic about, and then a few months later, it's maybe not going so well. So we want to talk about how do you sustain a meditation practice. But before doing that, I think it behooves us to really look at what got us to where we are. And so I want to start off with a question, and realizing that last month we talked about 5 different types of meditation. So each different type of meditation has different goals. So people's answer to this may vary not only on their personal situation, but actually which type of meditation drew them first or draws them now. So the question is, why do we start a meditation practice in the first place? And I'm throwing it out to the audience who are encouraged to speak loudly for the purpose of the recording. Why did you start a meditation practice? Lakpa.
I started to meditate because I was drawn by the topic of healing the healer and realized that I really needed something as a healer to sustain me in being able to be present to others, and really, by the time I started meditating, I'd already gotten to a really bad kind of almost burnout place. So it was really a lot of healing going on, and I didn't realize how much I needed to meditate.
So as a healer, you had nearly burned out and really felt that to continue doing what you did, you needed something that you could draw on to heal yourself and to continue in that. And I can see that a lot of people who might be in healing in any of its forms, therapy, psychology, taking care of someone in your family who's ill, nurses, doctors, energy workers, you go into it for this, high motivation, and then you feel drained. And it's interesting, how many people in the healing professions realize I need something. I've gotten past some point and I need something. Why else did people start a meditation practice? Pema.
So when I looked to start meditating, the first time I looked to start meditating, I was just curious. And I learned mindfulness meditation, and I found it somewhat calming and helpful. But the second time I started meditating, I was practicing. I had a practice of generosity and a practice of ordinary acts of compassion. And I did a lot of giving and a lot of, volunteer work and things like that. But at some point, I felt kind of dry as a volunteer, and just dry. And I thought to myself, I do all these acts of compassion, but I'm not really sure if I'm really compassionate in the way that I want to be compassionate. And that motivated me to learn more about what is the nature of true compassionate activity. And so I came to meditation from that perspective.
Well, that's interesting. And I can see how people can get there. There's this thing that goes around, all you need to do is be a good person. But people who really work on being a good person in their life may get to the point and say, I am a good person. I do these things. I volunteer. I'm generous. I give as much as I can. And yet somehow I don't feel juicy. I don't feel juicy. Isn't there more? What is there more about compassion that I need to know so that I can feel juicy? I don't know what other way to say it. We want more. We're spiritual, but somehow the juice isn't there. Yeah.
So were you looking explicitly for a meditation practice, or were you seeking spiritual teachings that then led to a meditation practice?
I was looking for, I think I was looking for a practice. So at that point I basically just went on the internet and looked at all compassion meditations, all spiritual compassion trainings, everything that I could find.
Everything you could find on the internet related to compassion meditation, compassion trainings, what was there that you could become.
And I very quickly concluded I would be meditating.
That you would or would not?
I would be meditating because most of what I found
Had to do with
was
meditation.
related to meditation at some point.
But I think the question he had was, did you know when you went searching that meditation was what you would find, or did you think, well, maybe there's some good workshops?
I think just from my prior experience with meditation, I think in the back of my mind, I thought that I would find meditation.
In the back.
Or a meditation practice.
That would help you.
That would help me, and related teachings, but that I needed training, and in my mind, the training involved me practicing on my own, me meditating,
Well, your previous experience had been to mindfulness, which is very different than active compassion meditations. Did you go in knowing that that would be there?
Well, I went in thinking I didn't know anything about, I went in thinking I might not know anything about compassion, so I kind of set aside all of my
Previous preconceptions.
I tried to set aside my conceptions and just start looking for, but I do think underneath, deeper in a deeper level, I thought I need a teacher or someone who knows about compassion more than I do, and I need a practice of some kind.
Okay. All right. So, marinating in compassion. What a great visual. To get juicy marination. What caused other people to come to meditation practice? You can share things that you've heard individuals say. You don't want to share their name necessarily.
Well,
you were pretty young, Jugni.
Yeah, I was part of what made me ask the question I just asked of Pema was thinking about my own experience, and I think that they were a little bit separate. I mean, I was drawn to yoga before meditation, and I was drawn to yoga because, because of how it's like a form of meditation, just maybe a little bit more approachable, seems more doable. But what I was seeking when I did find what led to my meditation practice, I don't think I was looking for meditation. I was looking for spiritual direction.
Okay.
And spiritual inspiration, and
spiritual direction and spiritual inspiration.
Yeah.
And you didn't know that would necessarily lead to meditation.
Right, I think I was looking for that more. That was explicitly what I was looking for. And then meditation ended up coming with that. It was part of that, and I was happy to do it as part of that. I don't know that I would say I was looking for meditation.
Okay. So,
and I think, if I could just say quickly, because there was someone who asked me a question recently, who's part of our yoga community, so he sees so many of us meditate, and he seems that he asks, I really have a challenge meditating. And I just wonder if he found something that felt like that for him, if the concerns about meditation might fall away, because he was following something that he was really interested in, instead of having to do this specific practice that he hears other people doing. But he was finding a path that he really resonated with.
So, is what you're asking about his question, maybe the meditation he started doing isn't one that was suitable for his goals or his personality?
Well, I guess when I think about talking to people who have similar questions, and we're talking about meditation in sort of more of a secular way, kind of divided from larger spiritual inspiration, like I said. I mean, that wasn't my experience. and it's harder for me to think of how to help inspire them when it is divorced
From spirituality.
and a sense of deeper, purpose and fulfillment and things like that.
And there are secular approaches to meditation just to bring calmness and peacefulness and more balance that aren't necessarily, to make this life easier, but aren't necessarily focused on transformation or changing something. Pema.
I think, I think very few people actually meditate to meditate. I think that they typically have some problem that they want to solve, and meditation is really being built for helping with anxiety, helping with stress, helping with physical concerns, helping caregivers. So I think people come because they want to solve a problem, and typically for themselves. Some people walk through the door because they're hurting in some form or fashion.
I agree. People do come because there's a problem to be solved. There's something in their life they want resolution for, and it's generally for themselves. If they're hurting, it's pretty much usually themselves that's hurting, even though others around them may be hurting as well.
Why did you start?
Why did I start? It was a huge surprise. I was faculty member at a college of nursing, and I was also doing energy healing and coordinating the local energy healing organization. I didn't teach it, but I brought in the instructors and coordinated the workshops. And I had been attending a church that really had nothing to do in terms of its teachings with what I was interested in, but they had healing as part of the service. And their pastor could see that I could heal. And so she allowed me, even though I wasn't a member of their religion and wasn't planning on joining, to do the healing, to join the healers up front. And so I went so that I could heal. And I knew that healing was my spiritual path at that time. And that's why I went. I also knew that she wasn't my teacher. It's interesting. I'm like, I'd gone to some of her classes, and I'm like, she's not my teacher. I even asked a friend who had some intuitive abilities, and I'm like, if you get any inklings on who my teacher is or where I can find my teacher, would you tell me? Because this woman is not my teacher. So I had a friend who was also a nurse and a massage therapist. And it was like one day, one afternoon, out of the blue, she gives me a call. She says, I just met this woman today, and she's a healer. She didn't tell me it was a Tibetan Buddhist Lama. She said, a healer, and she's teaching in Madison tonight. I saw her in Milwaukee today, and I lived in Milwaukee. And she's teaching in Madison tonight. She's not coming back to Milwaukee, and I don't want to drive alone, and would you come with me? And, I'm like, that wasn't all so interesting. So she's like, if you do, we'll stop by Ella's Deli and I'll buy you dinner. And Ella's Deli is great, but that still wasn't enough. And then she told me the story about how she had received this special blessing from this woman and given a meditation practice. That early afternoon and mid-afternoon, she had a massage client who was never happy. She didn't know why he came back. Never happy, always complaining, nothing ever helped him, but he'd come back. And so he was on her table, and she was doing the massage, and he was out in La La Land, the way they get on the massage table. And she heard this, like a voice in her mind, saying, why don't you use this light? You have it in you now. And it was related to the practice she'd been given an hour or two before, this meditation practice to do. And she said she did, and she saw this light come from her into him. And then when he got up from his massage, he was happy. He felt so good. Thank you so much. And she was stunned because he was never this way. And at that time, I happened to have an energy healing client with pancreatic cancer, which is has a very ominous prognosis. And I thought, anything that's going to make me a better healer, I want to go listen to. And that's why I went. So it was to be a better healer because he's got something really bad and it's definitely beyond my abilities. And, I need better abilities. So I can't even say, not that I wasn't suffering like other sentient beings were suffering, but I wasn't aware of it in a real in-your-face way. It was like, but hey, I'm going for anyone who can make me a better healer, I'll listen to. So, why did you?
Well, I was thinking about it, and there's probably multiple levels to the story, but I think ultimately I was seeking some kind of meaning and purpose in life. It just felt like, well, why am I here and what am I doing? And someone please tell me. There's like a whole nother side of the story where, Thekchen made me do it because I needed to have a meditation practice for her to be my healing touch mentor, but that's kind of just a side story
Right.
in the grand scheme of things.
And I didn't tell her what it had to be.
No.
I said, if you're going to be a healer, you have to have a spiritual practice. I don't care what it is.
Yeah.
But my teacher's coming, and if you don't have one, you might want to just come and check her out.
Yeah.
But clearly she was already looking for something.
So I guess it wasn't even really seeking a meditation. It was just seeking some kind of spirituality or teachings that made life seem a little bit more purposeful or meaningful.
I think we have a little bit of an unusual group here.
We do,
Yeah.
we do.
And
We're biased.
Because I think our standard answers are still going to be back in those. I want to feel less anxious.
I'm suffering and I want to relieve that suffering. I want to not be happy. I want to not be anxious. I want to not be depressed.
I want to be able to get along with the person I'm caring for on a daily basis.
I want to be a better mother or father or spouse because this is what we see in people who come to loving kindness. They are nice people. They are nice people, and yet I feel too crabby. I don't have patience with people.
Oh yeah, I want to be more patient.
I want to be more patient. I want to be more kind. I don't want to get angry as easy. I don't want to feel upset as easy. And they come to loving kindness. I mean, it was amazing in Washington how many practicing nurses came. And it was clearly because they went into nursing, I would hope. They went into nursing because they're compassionate and wanted to serve people and help people to feel better. And they came because they felt they needed something to allow them to not be upset in their life and in their work life. So it's definitely what we're seeing with the loving kindness program. Anybody else think, people have come, you can think that they've told you why? Any other particular reasons?
My friend made me.
My friend made me. I heard that. I heard that my spouse made me come, and I didn't know why I came. And then they'll sit there and listen to something and say, "Now I know why I came." And the most recent incident of that happening is someone saying, "I didn't know why I came," and it was because her inner critic is so strong. She needed some way to deal with the inner critic. And then after our discussion, she's like, "Now I know why I came." So that was kind of interesting. So the idea is we come to meditation practice, we need to look at why we came. And when you look at why people come in general, it's generally to relieve some kind of a personal suffering. So then what are the results of the practice? We come to meditation practice and we get results. Now the results are going to be different for different kinds of practices. Say there's mindfulness meditation, which is strongly billed, and it's true to help with decreased anxiety, help you be more aware, help you become more mindful. Some people find that difficult and they say, I just can't meditate, I just can't do it. Because that's a challenging practice for some individuals. It would probably be a challenging practice for me, actually. But when you look at your result, what kind of result did you get, and how long did it take to get it?
Well, very shortly after I met Rinpoche, I went on a 10-day retreat. And during the time that I was on retreat, I had too much head energy by far, and lots of mental chatter, and really adrenalized, fast-paced lifestyle. And in that retreat, I felt at some point like I clunked into my heart center and became, instead of like a head-driven person, at least during that time, I felt for the first time what it was like to feel like my center of gravity was my heart center instead of my brain. And it was a much more stable kind of feeling, that stable and open kind of feeling. And so I was sold pretty quickly on the idea that I wanted to continue meditating.
So what happened was you were surprised at the results.
Yeah.
Because your energy clunked down into the heart center, and you learned that you could live from the heart center rather than being very head-centered.
Yeah.
And so the stability and the openness.
And
you experienced life in a new way that was more meaningful.
And I have to admit that at the time I was surprised to find out it didn't make me any less smart.
It did not make you less smart. This is true. This is true.
I'm almost embarrassed to say it, but...
But I think this is common in the West. We are taught to be very head-centered.
Yeah.
Yes. Anyone else experience and how long it took? What were the results and how long it took?
Well, one of the results for me, I had a very strong habit of worry. And looking back now, I think it might have been a good year of practice. I was seeing results right away, but for a real, I felt results with the practice right away.
What kind of results did you feel right away?
Well, right away I felt while I was meditating, I was free of my worry.
So during meditation you were free of worry.
Right, I could get away from this constant thing. And it was like, so it was great. I gotta go meditate because I can't stand this, I want to feel relief from this. So I would get relief, but it didn't carry through into my day until I'd been doing it for, I'd say, it was carrying into my day sooner than a year, but I'm just going to say a
significant.
Year when
right.
I could really say I've
so,
changed.
So at the beginning, the relief from worry was only during meditation, and you were motivated to meditate because that was that's when you were free of this oppressive worry. And then gradually throughout the next year, freedom from worry might extend into your day. And it was a good year into regular practice where you felt that you actually had a change, where you were not a worrier.
Right. It's not like I couldn't get into that, like I was totally free in a year, but I'm just significantly different.
Significantly different experience. So some things do take longer, especially the longer we have this habit. If you think worry is a mental habit, we often don't think of our thinking habits as habits, but in fact they are.
And it was a wonderful kind of experience of empowerment for me, because nothing in my life that I would worry, the things that I had to worry about were still the same. You know, all my problems were still there.
The outer circumstances hadn't changed.
Right, but I changed the way I was
Relating
responding
to them.
Yeah.
Okay. That's a good point. The outer circumstances in life that had caused you to worry before weren't any different, but now you simply weren't dealing with them with as much worry.
Yeah.
Okay. Anybody else? What were the results of the practice?
I'm not sure I can really speak honestly about how I was perceiving it at the time or when I had the first recognition. I think for me it was more, I'd have these sensations in meditation that did feel like a relief, and I was extremely drawn to them. There are ways I have of looking at it now, but I think those are perspectives that I've either from talking to other people and kind of creating from after the fact, so I'm not exactly sure how I was processing it at the time. But I did still live with my family because I was a senior in high school. My mother, this was a very foreign practice to my parents, but my mother said she was able to appreciate it after some period of time because I wasn't taking out frustration on my younger brother and things like that.
So your mother noticed as a high school senior you weren't taking out your frustration on your younger brother.
So then meditation was all
then
good with her.
Meditation was good.
Yeah.
It was all good.
As all this Buddhist stuff, all right, it's had a good result.
Before then she was a little worried about your Buddhist practice,
Well,
but
this was not too long after 9/11.
okay.
So there was, people India is actually not that far from, Afghanistan.
Right.
If you're not that familiar with the different countries, it can seem pretty scary.
So that's interesting. So you recognize that there was some sort of a relief during meditation right away, but it's not like you could put your finger on what it was, but your mother noticed that you were a better family citizen. Yes.
I think sometimes it's easier to recognize it in the meditators around us. So when a new student comes and starts meditating, I think a lot of times that student is looking for certain things to happen in their meditation, like no mental chatter.
Right.
Which isn't necessarily
What's going
a
to happen?
sign of success. But what we can observe is the changes in that student over time, even over a short period of time. And it's like Jukne said, his mom observed that his way of handling things in life changed. And I think that that's one great place where we can look is how do we handle situations in our life? Because a lot of times it's slowly
Changing.
Quickly or slowly changes. So.
And that's a good point. I came because I wanted to be a better healer for this particular person. In fact, I don't know that I was a better healer for this person. I mean, it was an ominous prognosis, and in fact, he passed away. It was some months before I noticed that how I was doing healing had changed, and there were some pretty interesting results. Most of them more emotional and mental for the individuals than they were physical. But that was impressive, but that's not what kept me going. What kept me going is I noticed very, very, very quickly that how I experienced life changed. It was less stressful. It was things that had pushed my buttons. I didn't get my buttons pushed as easily, and that's not why I went into meditation. So the result I was getting didn't match the original draw right away, but that was okay because what was happening, and it was happening before I felt I was actually a meditator. I was still learning the meditation. I was still practicing. I mean, even barely beyond reading, I had barely had it memorized. So to think that I was in some deep samadhi state and focused my mind, etc., totally that's not what happened. And yet how I experienced life changed. Okay, your turn.
You know, I can't say that I, at this point, really remember a lot of the details of what changed. I do remember that it did take me quite a while to really get into a routine of meditation practice, and it definitely helped to have stuff to chew on that was other than ordinary. That definitely helped. And of course, I'm sure that I felt calmer after meditation sessions, but I think it's just been a process overall of gradual change.
And you also had a friend who,
Oh, yes.
she had a friend who's like, let's meditate, let's go to this, let's go to that.
Let's stay in the car until 2 a.m. talking about the Dharma. Yeah.
So, there
They
are
were-
benefits to a Dharma friend. Wangmo definitely had developed a Dharma friend who was right there, let's do. And yet here we've all been meditators for a number of years, and how many of us have had difficulty sustaining a regular meditation practice at one point or another? Everybody. So why does it become difficult? If we're having these, great results to begin with, why do problems arise where sustaining a practice become difficult? Yes.
I think as beginners, we meditate because it makes us feel better. But if we don't feel better every day, we're less inclined to meditate. Like if we don't get, like Lakta said, she felt better in her meditation. But sometimes I think we get to the point where we don't feel better in a specific meditation. And then we sort of
Aren't motivated.
It's not really,
Is anything really happening?
Yeah, we're looking at really short-term results too, I think.
Right, and the results are fairly quick. I mean, most everyone who does at least the practice we do finds some quick results. And it's like suddenly there's a new baseline. The old baseline of suffering isn't there, and we have a new baseline that's much more comfortable. We may not even notice the suffering that remains because we've got this new baseline, and now we're comfortable. Where's our motivation? And we're not necessarily going to improve that fast. And they find this even in research. When you're studying levels of people's level on some variable, you're going to have more variation at the edges of the curve than you are going to be in the middle. So you get more toward the middle, and it appears that things slow down. So you're not getting these like dramatic, wow, I feel so much better than I did a month ago. And you might go some months like, I kind of think I feel the same way as I did 3 months ago or 4 months ago or 5 months ago. What is my commitment to like take the time?
Yeah, or even I meditated and I don't feel any different than when or I don't think I feel or perceive that I feel any different than when I started today, or
Right.
And that happened to me yesterday maybe, and I get into this like, well, why am I doing this then if I'm not feeling better?
It's not working anymore because I don't get into meditation and feel different by the end. And we hit those plateaus. At least we don't think there's something going on because maybe it's so incremental and we're not seeing it. We're not seeing. I mean, some things, as Rinpoche said, some things take 3 to 4 years of active working on it. 3 to 4 years. Depends on what else might be a problem. I myself look at the onion aspect. The onion aspect, we take off this first layer of the outer onion and things feel so much better. This first layer of suffering. And what we didn't know is there's something underneath it where we had some, shall we say, subliminal suffering, suppress up things that we didn't know was suffering. Maybe it was kind of inactive suffering, and it needs to be cleared, but it wasn't active, so we didn't know we have it. And all of a sudden this difficulty arises, And we may actually think, why, this is causing me difficulty. Well, no, the difficulty was actually always there. But my focus was on this suffering, and once it's gone, and I'm like, whew, and I noticed this one that I didn't notice before. It may seem like it's something new, and in fact, it's not something new. But it's layers come off the onion, and we find out what's under it. And if any of us think that we're not an onion, I'm sorry. We are.
I think another aspect of that is something that we come across, especially in the conscious end of life training, in the hospice training, where we work on inpatients. And so the first homework exercise is to recognize when you're impatient. And so people often feel like, oh my God, I'm just being overcome by all of this impatience. But it's no more impatience than they had. They're just finally noticing
Their impatience.
how much it is. So there's this tendency to feel like I started to this mindfulness practice of being mindful of my impatience, and it's increasing my impatience, but it's not really. It's just like you said, peeling the onion. It was
always there. You just didn't notice it.
And in fact, if you hang in there, usually at some point begins to dissipate. But.
Right. That's a good point. Anyone else? Why does it become difficult?
Well, this is somewhat similar to what was said before, but I think for the people who do experience a notable amount of change or new sensations that feel good when they are in the earlier stages, it's just not really possible for that rate or pace of change to be sustained. And so the natural excitement that these people experience when they start the meditation is going to go away. And if you don't have an appreciation for the motivation doing the practice for some reason other than how you feel as a result, that can become discouraging. I think another thing for me was that I was used to, I was sort of old enough that I felt like I found things I was good at, and I was at the age where I was supposed to be deciding how I was going to develop further into those. And so meditation was very different. It was something so foreign and something I didn't have a bearing in and didn't feel like I was good at. And I was really searching for reference points to understand what made a good meditation, or what were the sensations that indicated I was going in the right direction. And perhaps, I think early on, some of those reference points that I found, were actually quite difficult for me to get to. So I became discouraged because I was using reference points that, maybe, were not likely to happen every meditation session.
Right. When I became a student, obviously I wasn't ordained yet. I had kids in school, regular job. So time became an issue, and the demands of family became an issue. But at least they weren't little kids. They could cook a meal for themselves if they needed to. And I remember one time, my son, who has zero interest in meditation, said, Mom, when you have a good meditation in the morning, I have such a good day. Keep meditating. which is kind of an interesting, and he wasn't just talking about when you meditate you're a more fun mom to be around, although there was that aspect, but he was literally, what can I say, energetically receiving benefit from my meditation. And then later on, I heard Rinpoche start telling people, if the mother and the family or the father and the family meditate, the whole family benefits, even if they're not meditators. And that meditation, that benefit, yes, it's like Juni's mother noticed that he wasn't taking out his frustrations on his younger brother, but there's an additional layer of benefit where in some ways it's almost like they meditated. If that makes sense to you. Because the energy of meditation's in the house, I guess. I don't know. There's many ways of explaining it.
Yeah, that brings something to mind for me, which is when I think it's it becomes difficult to sustain a meditation practice when you're just doing it for yourself. And we see very quickly that families will begin to appreciate. I was just visiting a family, and the mother meditates, the father does not, and he sat down in the chair and he said, "You're so much happier when you meditate. Please meditate, we all benefit." And so her motivation isn't just because she feels better, but it's because her family wants her to, and whether or not the family notices. A lot of times we have meditators who meditate because they know it improves their relationships. So.
Well, you know, that reminds me of a story I heard about someone on retreat. Sometimes families are a little resistant when a family member goes on retreat. And it's a slightly different topic than meditation, but it's similar. And so somebody came back off retreat and said to their spouse, "Gee, you're so much kinder and you're so much, more patient and cheerful." And the spouse's response was, "I'm not the one who's kinder and more cheerful. You are." And so not only did this the family more, "Mom, don't you think it's time you go on retreat again?" It's something that sometimes happens, but the changes in us definitely benefit those around us and our families and our loved ones and etc. So we make a commitment to ourselves and sometimes to a teacher that we're going to meditate, like every day or maybe twice a day or however we make our commitment. And then it's not unusual for people to have a break in that commitment. So when there's a break in your commitment and you realize, well, I made this commitment and I've broken my commitment, how do we respond to that? Personally, how do we respond to that? To a broken commitment for meditation or to do a practice?
Honestly,
Yeah.
in most cases, shame and blame.
In most cases, shame and blame.
Like, I am not good enough to meditate. How terrible is it that I didn't meditate? And did it again.
And then our response to, "I'm not a good meditator, how terrible it is, I'm already in trouble, I've already broken my commitment, I'm already a sinful person," and then we just drop the commitment. We say, I've broken it anyway. If I start again, I'm just going to break it again. And we become discouraged and we just stop. Well, maybe let me find something else that I'm better at. So this is I want to bring up a little story or a little discussion about the stick and the carrot. The stick would be bang, bang, hitting you from the back or hitting yourself over the head or someone hitting you. You have a commitment. You have to do it. Get back in there and do it. If you don't, you're going to break your commitments and, I don't know, go to hell or something. All right. That's a little bit exaggeration, but you know what I mean. Then there's the carrot. Then there's the carrot of, come on, get back into it. Look at the benefit. So some people may respond better to the stick and some may respond better to the carrot or some combination thereof. And evaluate yourself. What is your best motivator? If you've broken a commitment, what's your best motivator? Dealing with that. Rinpoche said, Westerners surprise her. They break a commitment and then they become discouraged and stop meditating altogether. And she says, just start again. She doesn't understand why we don't just start again. Why do we get all hung up about these broken commitments? But in fact, we do.
Inner critic.
The inner critic. The inner critic. We break a commitment and you think it's our inner critic says, well, you're just worthless. There's no sense. And we just stop. And our teachers even surprised, Westerners apparently have a stronger inner critic than people from Asian cultures. And that's what we hear, is there's a cultural difference that we have a stronger inner critic. That surprises some of our teachers from Western backgrounds, or Eastern backgrounds. Yes.
Well, I know in some cases that a student who has a teacher and has made a commitment that they ended up breaking might feel afraid. They might be afraid to have to, have to confess. Well, I didn't, I dropped the ball. I didn't fulfill that commitment. And I think it still goes to the inner critic because they're anticipating some kind of negative
They're anticipating a
response
negative
because
response
their own inner critic already is like
on their case.
So then they anticipate maybe
The teacher
that
being
the
that
teacher
way.
might be, yeah.
I have to say that, and maybe the same thing happened for some of you. At the last large meditation retreat, when Rinpoche said, those of you who want a mantra commitment, and I'm still working on one that I hadn't been doing so well on, so I didn't go up to get another one. But there's this long line of people who went up, and I could kind of overhear what she would, not that I was trying to, but I'm sitting at the front, I can kind of overhear. And many, many people, what's your latest? And a third to a half of the people had a broken mantra commitment. And she was just like, okay, I forgive you for that. Now what are we going to do next? I mean, she didn't even beat him on the head. It was like, okay, you're forgiven for that. What can we do that you actually feel confident that you can sustain? And maybe they had 100,000 of this. Well, instead, let's give them 20,000 of that, or 2,500, and a piece that they could, a bite that they felt they could actually accomplish. So we do have this fear of saying, I broke this commitment. And my observation has not been that our teacher is harsh about it. But the inner critic would make us afraid that we're going to have a harsh response. So we might as well just go away and do something else. This didn't work.
I also think it's our fear of failure in general. Not just the inner critic, but in our culture, we don't value failure. And I mean, there's so many studies that show that if you try to learn something and fail at it, and then try it again, that you actually learn it better and faster than somebody who either was successful or did pretty well the first time.
Okay.
But we think because we might fail or that we have failed, that that's a bad thing.
That's a bad thing. That's an interesting point. That's an interesting point. So my point in this part is looking at the stick and the carrot and a self-evaluation. Just deeply contemplate, what is it that truly motivates you to keep going now that some of the early sufferings are reduced? Why keep going? Why not just slide through life with a new baseline, this new comfortable baseline?
So we've talked a lot about why we start a meditation practice and what the benefits are and where things may go awry. So that brings us to what we do about it, or how we prevent those problems from happening in the first place. And really how we would approach it depends a lot on what the issue is. When I was thinking about this topic, I was just brainstorming different strategies, and as we've been talking, I've been thinking, well, it's not really like there's a list of things. I mean, there is, but it really is very individual, and knowing your own mind and your own tendencies and your perceptions. But one strategy that I know I've personally found helpful and that other people have mentioned to me as being helpful is remembering why. Remembering why you even started meditating to begin with, is remembering your personal meditational story, the story of your transformation. And you think, oh yeah, that's right. I started because this was my problem, and I had these experiences, and I made these great connections with Sangha members. And why did I stop again? And then you think, well, okay, I fell off the horse, or how do I get back on? And in a lot of ways, this goes to basic time management and planning and finding a good time in your day, whether that's early in the morning or before bed, or for us, for both, but many people don't meditate twice a day. But finding a time and a regular time that works for you and is sustainable. And also, along with that, simplifying your life, getting rid of the things that aren't important to you anymore. We do a lot of things that aren't really important to us anymore, and it's just out of habit. We think, oh yeah, that's right, I have to read before bed. When inside we might want to meditate before bed or do mantra before bed. We have these stories of what we think we have to do in our daily lives. So I guess I've said a lot of things there, but creating a healthy meditational habit is what I want to get at. And I think research has shown that if you do something like, it's either 3 weeks or 31 days, I can't remember which, then you're more likely to sustain it. So if you can just get past that time with a regular habit, you're more likely to sustain it. And this doesn't just happen when we first start meditating. It starts when we add a new meditation, or our schedule changes, or we stop meditating and restarts. It's this need to continually cultivate this healthy meditational schedule.
Maybe that's a good time to use some of the new technology and create a little alert or alarm reminder. Meditation time in 15 minutes.
She's looking at me.
I know. Pema has actually, how's that been going? Pema's been doing that.
So when I got back from long retreat, I scheduled my day in terms of work periods and periods where I wanted to meditate. And I wanted to do extra meditation, but short like refreshment meditations as opposed to necessarily long ones.
Mm-hmm.
So I had about 9 alarms a day.
Whoa.
And so I had alarm for morning, my individual meditation, group meditation, starting work, lunch break, starting work again, and over lunch break I would do like a little refreshment, finishing work, and then starting meditation in the evening. So I guess I had 8. And what I find is that works for about 2 or 3 weeks. And then what happens is I'm so used to hearing whatever the alarm is that I can tune it out. So if I'm doing something and I have an urgent deadline, I can just tune out the alarm for just a minute or 2 while I finish that thing up instead of stopping. And that's my downfall. If I tune out the alarm to just finish something for a minute, then I stop hearing the alarms altogether.
Can you change the alarm? There's usually an option of different alarm sounds.
I can, but I think one of the takeaways is that I really just it needs to be a signal that I need to stop right then, and not just say, okay, 5 more minutes, or, it's a pretty song, so I can just sort of tune it out. And
it's the 21 hours.
Because you just push it off and push it off and push it off. And most of the times when I think it's really urgent, I can probably manage my time. If I just felt the pain of that a little bit, I could probably be incentivized to manage my time better. But my second strategy, because I still haven't overcome the first one, my backup strategy is to change the sound of the alarms. So, and they're all currently Dharma chants or things that remind me of my practice in addition to that, because I can control what they sound like.
You need something so compelling that you can't possibly resist it.
Or something so distracting I can't focus, I just have to stop and go.
Or something so irritating that you just,
And the
I gotta
third-
turn off that alarm.
The third thing is when I use an alarm, I can't go turn the alarm off and go back to work, which every once in a while I do that too. And it doesn't take many times before
Before the
it no longer
habit's
works.
broken, yeah.
So,
I wonder if part of it, I mean, if we're just still thinking of just relying on technology, which is sort of the area, if you put it as a calendar items instead of just alarm items, because then you, when you're scheduling your time too, saying, oh, are you available, you see this block in your calendar. I know Scott's sort of done that.
I think I could do better calendaring, but I noticed that with calendar notifications, sometimes I'm not there, or, if it's an alarm that makes a lot of noise, it's difficult to ignore.
I think
But-
he's speaking
Yeah.
more than just the alarm that comes from the calendar program, as the fact that your calendar says, I blocked out this time so you don't schedule anything else.
That's true, that's true. That would be helpful.
Yeah.
But I have to admit, I'm the kind of person that I find it difficult to do the same thing at the same time every day. Routines are difficult for me. And so I started with a huge lack of discipline in that arena. And so having things like technology sort of helps me set a container so that I can do it.
Speaking of technology, I know of several individuals, and this is one of the reasons why we have some of our practices recorded. I know that one person said, I just can't sit down and do the practice. But if they put on a recording of it, they can sit down and listen to themselves being led through the meditation by the recording. And so, I mean, this is another thing, is if you're one of the people that feels, I just can't bring my mind in and focus, I just can't bring it in and focus, then record the practice and use that for the times when you can't, and be
Can't
led
focus.
through it, be led through it.
Yeah, that definitely is a good transitional strategy. I don't know that I would recommend that on a routine basis, just because it's definitely a more passive way of meditating.
That's true, but to get through tough times,
but
I think.
but to get through tough times as a
Yeah.
transitional measure.
There are things that you can do too. If you are listening to a recording, you can bring your awareness more to your own state of mind and generating your state of mind. So it can be more passive, but you can actually make more of an effort
Make
for
it
it to
more
be
active.
active too.
I
And
know-
there's more for you to do then. So a lot of people, when there's more to do, a lot of people can focus. So
Yeah.
I know I've heard Rinpoche say once that she recommended people record themselves doing their practice so they can play it for themselves. And then if they become ill, they can put on and lay there, maybe they're laying there in bed feeling awful. They listen to their own voice leading themselves through practice. And she really recommended, this works well even at end of life, or if somebody's
Yeah,
really
that's
quite
true.
ill. So it establishes a pattern of you listening to yourself.
yeah.
So that's kind of nice.
Well, similar to that, I've also heard Rinpoche talk about if you're not wanting to meditate, if you're in that state of mind, picking up your sadhana and just reading it, and like you're hearing the words, and they're coming out and going back in your ear and coming to your heart, and so you're hearing yourself saying it, and I found that to be a particularly helpful strategy if I'm having a lot of wandering mind, or
Yeah, it would engage your speech. You're speaking it. You're reading it, engages your visual. You're hearing yourself say it. So it engages multiple sensory systems, and that might be
helpful to engage you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And the other thing, before we jump to another topic, I wanted to go back to Pema and the comment that was made about scheduling meditations. It also has an element of making it a priority. It's just as important as all the other items on your to-do list and on your schedule. It's important enough to put on your calendar. And that it has a certain feeling to it that to me it feels like it's harder to not do because you've made that commitment. You've already made the commitment, but you've made the commitment and you put it on your calendar and it's there, and it's just as important as the other items on your to-do list. All right. Let's see.
You have something to say?
I was thinking how Rinpoche says that meditation is like cleansing of the mind, and you wouldn't think of not bathing every day, would you?
Or not brushing your teeth.
You don't meditate?
Or brush your teeth.
Oh my God. How long has it been?
How could you not brush your teeth every day? How can you not clean your mind, you know? Scrub, scrub.
That's great. Thank you, Lakpa. That's a great analogy. Also, having a sacred space or a meditation place is helpful to sustaining a meditation practice. You have a place that you go to that's your safe place, and your housemates or your family know it's your safe space, and you're going there to sit quietly and to work on your meditation practice. But also, by doing your meditation practice there, you're imbuing that space with the energy of your practice and empowering it to some extent. So having a regular meditation space is also helpful to having healthy meditation habits. Regular retreats, teachings, all are very helpful to maintaining a regular meditation practice. And not only because it creates, again, that healthy habit, you're doing a regular meditation practice, you're engaging with other people who are also meditating and in alignment with those same goals and aspirations that you have. And it can serve as an inspiration and a reminder of your practice.
I've found that people who take retreat twice a year, I think, like every 6 months or so, or take deeper training every 6 months or so, tend to be more stable in practice over time. Even if they lose, they stop practicing a little bit, it's easier for them to get back into it. And but it seems to be, every 3 or 4 is great, but even every 6 is really helpful.
It's like an infusion.
Yeah.
Infusion of nutrition and motivation. And
So planning retreats into your annual calendar, even if someone was busy, weekend retreats.
Or training even, just additional training. You might take a 6-week course or, something like that.
that's true. Or plan to listen to recordings of teachings. I was on the internet last night on the website for the Berzin Archives and discovered that he has a course on there of Lam Rim teachings, and I was like, oh, when I finish teaching this class, I'm going to go and listen to all of these. So even there's so many teachings, not just Rinpoche's, but teachings available out there on the internet in various Buddhist topics. So you can definitely find a wealth of inspiration for free. I don't think we really talked so much about dealing with schedule changes as far as an issue or as far as an obstacle to creating a meditation practice. But personally, when my schedule changes, it's hard for me to maintain a meditation practice because I'm used to getting up at the same time and meditating, and then, having breakfast and then going to work. And then if my schedule changes, it like throws me up into the air, and wherever I come down, I don't know. But when that happens, I find that it's important to reestablish a good schedule, to go back and find, if you need to move your meditation time to another time, to find a good space for it, but also to be flexible to some extent and to not beat yourself up. Because if you go, oh, you didn't meditate, or you didn't meditate at the right time or long enough, and then you kind of end up feeling discouraged or afraid, and then you're like, well, I don't want to meditate at all. So if you're going to beat me up there.
That may be a good time to put on the recording.
Yeah.
Put on the recording.
That's actually one of my strategies, and actually something that Rinpoche has suggested to me before is if, temporarily your life becomes really crazy and it's not, you have to get on a plane, or, there's some family emergency, or, there's things beyond your control. She said even taking a moment to recite your meditation. And I don't know how you would do that with something like breath meditation, but for those of us who have a little bit longer form for our meditations, to recite the different parts of the meditation and just connect with it for a moment so that there's that space or placeholder for that to continue. That was helpful for me.
Or just to sit on your cushion for 5 minutes.
Yeah, or just, set a period of time, because you could
Or
almost
half
always have 2 or 3 or 5, 10 minutes.
I think this is an important area, that having a bag of tools for when things get crazy, like your creative strategies for how to get your meditations in if your schedule is unpredictable or chaotic. And I know that people in our Sangha have a great many strategies, whether it's if you're at work, going out to your car to meditate for a half hour, or going on a mantra walk and doing your mantra for those that have mantra practices, or even doing walking meditation. And when I go to work, sometimes there's a little, I'm trying to think what it's called, like a little locker room that people can use if they need to change their clothes before work. And there's a little room, and I think it's really intended for people that need to breastfeed or something like that. But it's got a little curtain, and I'll go in there and I'll pull the curtain closed and I'll meditate for a half hour, and no one ever, well, people come in, but no one's ever bothered me. So finding your little place in the middle of your day can be helpful to get in extra meditation time.
Well, and I think that's so important because it's work, and especially interactions with computers, are so stimulating in a way that it can make me feel like I don't want to meditate because my states of mind are so different from that. It feels almost uncomfortable to slow down. But if I get like a little bit in the middle of the day, it helps me at the end of the day to relax my mind, or be more relaxed at work.
Thank you, Pamela. And I've also, it just reminded me of, for those of us that are doing a regular meditation practice, twice a day as opposed to once a day, if you can get in another meditation session, even if it's just, 5, 10, 15 minutes, you're decreasing the amount of time that you're away from your meditation, rather than it being, from, 6 a.m. until 9 o'clock at night. Maybe you're only going from 6 to 1, and then from 1 to 9. So you're getting that kind of infusion a little bit more frequently. I don't know, what other strategies have people found to be helpful to get meditations in? If you're flying or traveling, or...
Oh, if I'm on the plane traveling, I can either pull off my mala and do mantra, or put on the headphones. You know, people always have either headphones on or ear things in, and listen to a meditation, listen to a practice. I think that's a good time to listen, because no one thinks anything of you listening to something, and you could be listening to a recording of a practice, or you could be listening to a teaching. But I think it's a good way to get it in, and it kind of reduces the noise of the people around you.
Great, thank you, Thekchen.
I used to get lots of mantra done when I did lots of traveling. I cranked through those mantra commitments. People wonder, how do you get through so many mantra commitments? Because I spend so many hours on a plane.
So making use of your downtime.
Hey, I can get in 50,000 green tars between Albuquerque and Milwaukee.
You're also a very fast mantra reciter.
It's not the speed, but yeah.
Well, also I know there's a lot of people that are making use of the iPads and
The
iPods
ubiquitous
and
iPad, yeah.
iPhones, and now I can't get it back
It's okay
up, but-
because I'm pretty much done, yeah.
But if you have multiple meditation practices, having your sadhanas, your meditation practices on the iPads, and then you can throw it in your bag, and when you have some spare time, you can go, oh yeah, that's right, I've got my practice, if you don't have it memorized.
Oh yeah, I've got the printed practices on here, you know, the documents. I've got teachings on here. And, you know, you've got word processors. So I know on the way to Washington, I listened to a teaching and I took notes. And the teaching was on here and I was taking the notes on here. So these are cool.
So again, making use of technology. Any other thoughts on creative ways to get your meditations in?
To get them in or get restarted?
I'd say get them
Either
in
way.
at this point, or you could say get restarted.
Well, I have restarted ones, because I think one of the challenges is, that we talked about earlier, was, you know, feeling like it wasn't working anymore. And I think you know, to remember that, you know, we have several potent analogies, like meditation is cleaning the mind. You wouldn't go without brushing your teeth. But it's also sort of like a medicine for the mind. You know, so you wouldn't skip your heart medicine or, you know, your diabetes medicine. So there are reasons to meditate for everyone that don't have to do with just feeling good or feeling better. And there are other reasons, and to remember those other, you know, to begin to understand those extra reasons, and to recall them, you know, when you're feeling discouraged. So however it works for you.
Yeah, this is actually part of the last section I wanted to talk about, which is sort of recharging and sustaining a motivation. It's, again, why are you doing your practice? And there's many different levels of why you do a meditation practice. You know, there's the physical reasons, whether it's reducing pain, or psychological, of feeling better, reducing stress. But then there's also a list of motivations that would include maybe, you know, for the benefit of your family, or for the benefit of your community, or for the benefit of all sentient beings. You're doing your meditation practice because you have the opportunity to practice, and maybe others don't. So you can do your practice for those people who are not so fortunate to have a chance to meditate, or to be in circumstances where they can meditate.
You know, I know last fall, I think it was around last fall, I'm not entirely certain, I'd identified 3 major things that I wanted. One had to do with an obstacle that needed to be overcome, that it was clear to me I needed help with. Another was relationship that needed repair, and another one was a skill that I wanted, a skillful means type of a skill that I wanted. And so in meditation, once a day, I would like request those. I'd insert it into the meditation. And I noticed like over the winter, by the time spring was coming about, one of them was basically accomplished and another one was well on its way. And that something about that's success. So identifying, whether it's something that needs to be repaired or something new that you want, or both, identify maybe one or two or three big things, and then that's your goal. And it's not going to happen in a week, and it's not going to happen in one meditation. But over the course of a season, you can see progress. And I think that's motivating.
So setting goals.
Yeah.
Like meditational goals. Or
and they're personal. You might say, I have a problem with this, and I'm really still struggling with it, and maybe I've had it my whole life, or maybe not, but this is an obstacle and I really need help. Maybe I've had it for lifetimes. I really need help with this obstacle. And then you're requesting the specific thing that you need, and be amazed how, like I said, over the course of a season or half a year, you can see progress on that, and that's motivating.
So I also hear the self-improvement aspect of a long-term goal of self-improvement.
Mm-hmm.
I think also, we, when we don't feel well, we don't meditate.
Mm-hmm.
Or when we feel agitated, we don't meditate. And I was deeply moved by a practitioner who showed me a note, a reminder note that basically said, I'm the kind of person who loves to meditate, and if I don't want to meditate, then there's something wrong in my mind.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a good time to actually, or some version of that.
No, it said, I'm not myself, and that shouldn't be trusted.
That's a good reminder. I've used something similar for myself, that I love to meditate, and I love to do group practices, and I love to read the Dharma or listen to the teachings. And if I don't want to do those things, clearly something's out of alignment, and that I know I'll feel better after I do those things if I can just get past whatever is going on. So again, knowing your mind and your tendencies.
But that was, thank you for showing that to me, because that was a really powerful thing for me.
And interestingly enough, yesterday as I was flying back, I was reading parts of the Lam Rim, and there were two great quotes related to today's topic. One of them is J. Pabonka Rinpoche said, when some unfavorable circumstance befalls us, we immediately curtail our practice. But do not do this. Just as you have to beware while traveling when you come to a narrow gorge. And I'm assuming that meant if they went through a narrow gorge, they were more likely to be waylaid by robbers. So they had to be more careful. Just as you would be more careful when you come to a narrow gorge, you should be even more careful not to give up your practice when you get sick or conditions are hard. Because that's when something, the travelers or the robbers can come and rob you of your motivation to practice.
Mm-hmm.
So I thought that was interesting.
That's a great quote. Thank you. Yeah, we definitely, and this is actually interesting because Rinpoche has said that in the East, when people have obstacles or don't feel well, they step up their practice. And we do the opposite. We have a tendency to stop practicing if we don't feel well, or if we're have craziness going on in our lives, when we would benefit from meditation.
Maybe that goes back to something I was sort of bringing up before, which was that for them, the practice is woven into the fabric of their worldview and the culture that they came up in. And for the West, I think for us, we come to meditation more from a feeling point of view.
Yeah.
And the feelings have changed, and then the motivation for the practice is different. But it's much more solid if it's part of your sort of whole belief with life from when you were a baby.
Yeah, yeah. And it seems like there would be like an inherent belief that they would benefit from the meditation practice, or that it would have some kind of beneficial role.
What?
And on another note, there are plenty of teachings on inner critic and how to deal with your inner critic. So I think that's the other thing is, like sometimes practitioners come to me and they say, I haven't been practicing, I feel so bad, and they're pretty upset. And I just say, well, why don't you just, it's 8 a.m., why don't you just practice now? Today's a new day. You can just start practicing right now.
Right.
Instead of it being a deficit, it could just be like, oh, I remember that it's important to me, and I could just practice because it's important to me. But a lot of times we spend time hanging out with our inner critic.
Whereas we could put all that inner critic energy and time into practice instead.
Yeah.
One thing I found interesting since I learned the loving kindness meditation is if I really can't bring my mind to focus on my main practice, if it's just like wherever and won't come in, if I do the loving kindness meditation first, then I'm often in a place where I can do the main practice. So there's nothing wrong with a preliminary that will bring your mind in. I mean, there's no rule that says you can't do 2 practices in a row.
And actually, and doing a mind calming practice or mantra or pranayama or checking the breath all can be helpful to get you into the right place for meditation. If you remember to do it, like remembering the instructions.
Well, you mentioned having a bunch of tools.
Yeah,
I recommend people write those down so that you can refer back to them, because when it gets hard, you're going to forget your tools. But if your tool list is written, then now what's on my tool list?
Yeah.
And I think we've all had the experience when someone's having an issue but they don't reach out to their sangha. That makes it even more hard. Like that the resource of your spiritual friends in the sangha. That they can help you through a difficulty, whereas if you isolate and you don't want to let anyone know you're having a problem, then you're really getting stuck.
Yeah, that's definitely true. A benefit of sangha is to help support you and carry you through the difficult times and inspire. All right. Any other thoughts?
There was just one more that I'm thinking in terms of, we keep touching on the guilt that people feel. It's hard to make the transition from that into giving yourself permission to practice again. And it makes me think, it was surprising to me when I learned how Buddhism, there's a lot of, there's vows and there's different kinds of commitments, but built into Buddhism was something that was new to me, which is how to purify when those have been broken. It's not like just they're broken and then that's finished, you failed. It's like they built these practices in so that when people make mistakes, there's a way to return to the purity of that commitment. So you're able to move on in a fresh way and not have the baggage of the heaviness of that failure. And I think maybe in our meditation, when we break our commitment, some way to have some ritual to return, say, okay, do this, and now when I step into the next meditation, I don't have to carry the guilt and the heavy baggage of that feeling of failure.
Yeah.
I just saw a presentation by RSA Animate on sort of being ethically compromised. So they're finding that society's tendency is that we kind of don't sweat the little stuff. So we can kind of fudge things, like it doesn't matter if we take that pen, really, it's not worth much. So there's these little minor ethical infractions that we go through. And what they found is that it seemed like if there was a process for starting fresh, that people were more likely to maintain a higher ethical system over time. And I'm kind of summarizing what I remember, it might not be quite exact. But they said that after studying confession in Catholicism, they feel that that the Catholic Church might actually be onto something, because they're offering a way to wipe the slate clean and start over, you know, enthusiastically sort of start over trying to maintain those values. And so I think what Jigne is saying actually has some research behind it now, that, you know, it's great that our system, the system that we're studying, actually has built into it the way to say, I tried and I messed up and I'm sorry, and
I'll do better next time, or I'll try to do better next time.
Reconnect, as he said, with the purity of those intentions and just go for it again, you know. And
Yeah.
And on that point, if people know that they have a way that they're more likely to be in a kind of a higher practice level, like when Rinpoche did I Take the Vow here and offered the vows, I know there were people who they chose not to take them because they didn't feel like they could keep it 100%. So they just didn't take it at all. But if they'd known that they didn't have to be 100% perfect the whole time, they would have taken it. Yeah.
All right. Well, then we are over our time, so join us in dedication. May my capacity for compassion be infinite. I dedicate these efforts to complete and total enlightenment, so that I may be of benefit to all sentient beings. May it be so.